Hi and welcome to today's video. Today I'll show you the process of drawing and painting these apples using watercolors. Using a reference image from Unsplash, I am using my Sailor Fute pen to directly draw out my apples and the leaves around it. I'm using a 300 GSM watercolor sheet and the ink in my pen is Noodler's ink, which is waterproof for the fountain pen. I find this style of illustration a lot more fun than sketching first with pencil, as it helps you to improve your illustration skills, your hand-eye coordination, and also improves your observation skills. I use my Lamy Safari pen as well to illustrate. Today, however, I'm going to stick with a Sailor Fute. What I like about this pen is the quality of lines. The thick and the thin lines give it a very organic feel. This is possible because of the nib, which is bent at 55 degrees angle. The one tip for using a pen for illustration is to not be slow. Just go with the flow without thinking too much and let the pen guide you with your strokes. The quality of strokes with a fountain pen are amazing as compared to a micron, at least for me. This may vary for every individual, so try out different pens and then stick to what works best for you. Since you cannot erase the lines that you have drawn with ink, what I normally do is I take a pause in the middle, I look at the composition and then I decide if I'm happy with what I have created. So sometimes if your proportions go up and down, you can go over it again with your pen. It's okay if the wrong lines are shown. It helps you later to ensure that you get a better composition created, you get your proportions right, you get your lines right. So it's okay to make mistakes, especially when you're learning and when you're experimenting. My basic illustration is done, so I'm just going to go over this entire piece and add extra lines wherever I need to. I'm just going to make some of the areas a little thick, some of the areas a little thin with the strokes of the lines, so it gives a little more depth to it. So this is a very interesting part for me because this is where you can add a little bit of life to your illustration. Now that my artwork is ready, join me today in painting this beautiful piece. I'm using a mix of watercolors of different brands like Camel, Magello Mission, Gold and Daniel Smith. This palette I'm using is from Magello Mission. I love experimenting with watercolors and I keep trying different things every time I make a piece of painting. This process for me is a lot of fun and it also helps me discover something new each time. These experiments allow me to add new elements to my style and also helps me to figure out what my final style is. I'm doing a wet on dry technique to begin with for the first layer and then I will keep building up on top of it. This style of first inking and then adding the colors is something I have been experimenting with recently, especially during people sketching. Once the base yellow is done, I'm adding red and then I'm going to slowly progress to all the greens. You can either wait for your base layer to dry or go ahead with painting over it with a darker shade to start adding shadows. If your base layer isn't dry, the colors will blend in and help you to create a smooth blend. In case your base layer is completely dry, once you add the darker layer on top, you can clean your brush, have just a little bit of water and then just blend the two shades in, the earlier one and the new wet color that you have added. When I paint fruits, I feel a lot of calmness inside me, and it is something that I enjoy painting a lot. So, I want you to pick up subjects that mean a lot to you, that make some amount of difference in your life, and each time you look at your painting, it should bring back some memories. So, for me, Apple has been a very integral part of my life. So, ever since I started working out, which was during I think my 20s, I used to wake up in the morning, have an apple, and then head out to the gym. So, this has been part of a huge portion of my life. So, apples make me feel very happy. So, like that, I want you to pick out subjects that are very close and connected to you. Like I was saying earlier about the next shade of color, I'm adding a darker layer of red right now on top of the base color. If you're a beginner and you're painting this along with me, or if you are looking to experiment something, then I would recommend you to paint each apple over here in a different color. So you can either go monotones or you can mix a couple of colors, figure out how they blend with each other. So this would be a very good learning experience for you. You can leave the painting at this point because it looks pretty complete. You just need to add one more layer to the leaves. But I'm going to experiment a little bit and give some more depth. So I'm using some brown mixed with a little bit of Penny's grey to see how the effect comes. What I have noticed when we use a little bit of brown is the apples may tend to look like they have ripe too much or that they are rotting. So you have to be a little careful. So another tip that you can do at this point is mix a little bit of red along with the brown, so there is more of a reddish brown rather than complete brown as it is. If you're a beginner, what you can also do is get a bunch of apples, keep them in front of you, and then just observe how it looks. Maybe have a light source coming from one side, so you will notice all the different shades which are there. The place where the light is shining on it will be much lighter, and the other area would be a little darker. And then notice where the shadow comes. So this will help you to really enhance your art skills. It will help in your observation, and you can reflect the same in your painting. Again here, you don't have to replicate everything exactly as you see in terms of the colors. You can even completely change your colors. Instead of a red apple, you can make a blue apple, you can make a purple apple. You just need to understand light and shadow. That is the most important thing which is there in any kind of art that you create. Now that my apples and the leaves are done, I'm going to add a little bit of blue in the background. So I'm using this particular color here, which is called as the horizon blue. Now, if you do not have this color, just replace any other color that you have. You could use a cobalt blue, which is very light in color. You can also mix a little bit of cobalt along with white if you don't want to use it as it is. So one method again is where you dilute it and you use the lightest version that you can. Otherwise, mix a little bit of white. You will notice if you mix white, it becomes a little thick because its consistency is a little different right now. It won't be as opaque as your regular watercolor is, which is why we don't mix a lot of white if you want something very transparent or a translucent effect like a watercolor effect. So you can still experiment, go ahead and try different styles. You don't have to stick with one style. You can even go with a mixed media style. A mixed media style is when you're going to mix different kinds of art supplies. For example, you can have watercolors, gouache, color pencils, crayons, and then you can just mix them all together, use different art supplies at different areas. Maybe you can use color pencils in the end to give a little bit of depth. You can use your markers in the end as well. So there are different ways that you can play around with it. You could also give a background color in the beginning rather than going in the end. If you're a little worried of how this whole thing will come out, if it's going to get into your artworks, for example, over here, if the blue will blend in with the green, if it's still wet. So all of those small issues would be there. So if you're not comfortable doing the background in the end, you can also do it in the beginning and let it completely dry and then go ahead and paint your central object. Now, choosing a background color is also a very important thing. Don't use something from the same family unless you're very sure of what you want to do. So if you're a beginner and you're wondering what kind of color you have to choose, then if you do not understand the color wheel too well, all you need to do is use a contrasting color. For example, we have used reds and greens over here for our main object. So a completely different family would be a blue. So that's a good idea to go with. You could also use a yellow over here, which will still enhance your painting because it works well with red. So there are different ways that you can handle it. The next step would be to understand a color wheel and try to understand which kind of colors go well together, whether it has to be contrasting colors, whether it has to be tertiary colors, secondary colors. What are the different varieties of colors that you need to use? Speeding up the video over here to finish the background, I'm going to add a little bit of depth on the right hand side to show that the light is coming from the left. So even on the background, I wanted to reflect a little bit. At this stage, it is a good idea to just wait for your painting to dry, have a look at it from a distance. Otherwise, just leave it for a couple of hours, come back to it, see how it looks, and then decide if you want to add in more details. Like for example, over here, I feel like I want to add a little more depth at the background, and even for my individual apples and my leaves, I feel like I need to add a little bit more of depth. So by depth, I need to add darker layer on top of it. So it's very helpful when you look at things from a distance, observe it, and then decide if you want to add more details to it. I'm now adding a little bit more of depth, and this time I'm added more of red along with the brown to make sure that it doesn't look very brownish. I want the apples to look a little more reddish. It's very beautiful to work with watercolors because you never know what your final outcome is going to be. So I like going in painting watercolors with absolutely nothing in my mind. I don't think of what my end result should be. I just want to have fun when I'm creating the painting. I hope you enjoyed watching the process of painting this watercolor piece. If you're new here, do consider subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon to get notifications every time I put up a new video. Hope this video inspires you to start painting and experimenting and creating a lot of beautiful paintings.